Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. So now Arlene is back home and Katie is in a hotel somewhere. So I'm going to ask Katie, well, maybe, I don't know, she might know what's happening in Iowa, but what is happening wherever you are? Is there a farm there?
Arlene, I love that just sounds like I'm in witness protection or something. Like Katie's just in a hotel somewhere.
I'm giving you the opportunity to say where you are if you want to.
I'm on the lam. No, I'm in Boston for a work trip for a week, so I flew in yesterday, and I'm here until Saturday morning, which is nice. I flew out a couple days early. I have high school friends here, so I got to see them. And it's nice to just have a day or two to decompress and um, recuperate some from travel. The bigger part of it is that the airport is a 3-hour trip from my house, so a 3-hour flight ends up being an all-day event by the time you drive there and park and fly and then get to where you're going, and then
Yeah, that's right.
it's a whole day thing. It's
People know about travel, but yeah, the distance of the airport definitely adds to it. Plus having to be there early and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, I one of my coworkers also flew in early, and we did realized that it took her less time to get from Copenhagen, Denmark to Boston than it took for me to get from our farm to Boston
That sounds about right.
via Minneapolis. That's pretty horrifying because Copenhagen is 3 times as far away. Um, but anyway, um, I don't know how things are going on the farm, but since I haven't heard anything, and I do have proof of life on my family, so that's always good. I don't worry about not hearing anything as long as I have evidence that they are alive.
I'm sure everything's just going great.
I'm sure it is. Sorry, Jim. I hope everybody's still alive. He'll probably listen to this. Um, I got to go on a duck boat tour today, which was pretty cool.
So not actual ducks, right? That's like one of those things.
No, they're the.
That's very disappointing for the farmers when you go on a duck boat tour and there's no ducks.
There were no ducks on the boat either. I was listening to a dad troll his kids, and I think we may have found the one person in the world who trolls his kids harder than I do. Because, yeah, it was pretty bad. And so I, of course, being the person I am, I waited for him to finish trolling his kids, and then I turned around and I said, "But what do you mean you're not going to fill this boat with ducks? I'm out of here." Like, and his poor kids are just staring at me because they're probably like 9 and 12. And they're just like, there's just weird adults everywhere.
So is that one of those amphibious vehicles? So it like drives around on land a bit and then head into the water?
Yeah, they were developed as troop movers. It's what they took onto the beaches at Normandy, um, which was a surprisingly poignant moment for Veterans Day. My grandfather on my dad's side was on the beach at the invasion of Normandy, so there's probably a good chance that he was in a duck boat like that, and I bet it was substantially less fun. I think that probably wraps it. Well, like, what are you going to say about it?
Well, there's the understatement of the century.
Nobody shot at us, so that was nice. But it was just sort of an unexpected moment of somberness in our fairly rowdy duck boat tour.
So from a Canadian to an American, we get lots of coverage about your political system, although we don't. In theory, it doesn't impact us too much, but of course, being neighbors, it does. But we don't get to participate. So, how are you feeling about last week?
I got to take my kids to vote, which was nice because
Did they want a sticker too? Do they give stickers to kids who don't vote?
Oh, they got stickers. They were pretty stoked about that.
That would be a frustrating moment for a kid to be like, no, this sticker's mine. You don't get one until you're 18.
The boy child had a lot of questions about the candidates. None of them were talking points I had prepared for. Um, he wanted to know if our former and future president has a cat and whether his parents had wanted him to want to be president or if this was something he had come up with on his own. I mean, these are not things that are generally covered in.
Right, yeah. I mean, you probably could find out, but yeah, you don't have that just right on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, it just wasn't what I was not the political discourse that has been happening in our country. I feel like I can safely say that he does not have a cat. But other than that, I gave myself some time to be upset about it, but I find that at least for myself, if I spend much time thinking about things that I am not happy about for one reason or another, that it's not a positive experience. And especially things that I cannot change. So I have been making a real effort to spread as much positivity as I can everywhere else. And I'm just going to go with that because that I can change.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
Tipping extra and being even more friendly to people. And one, we were talking last night about making an a extension for the Uber app for Midwesterners because there's, if you happen to take an Uber somewhere, especially if you're a rural person like I am, so it's not a regular thing. There's an option for no conversation, but there's no option for I'm a Midwestern farm mom, and if I don't chat with you, my head will explode because it feels so rude to not chat with the person. And I just thought, there really ought to just be an app where you could use AI, maybe, to program a Midwestern person to chat with whenever you're in places that there's no.
I can tell that you work in tech because this is something that I would never think of. I can think of nothing I would hate more than talking to a robot.
The coworker I was eating dinner with is a software engineer. The high school friend that we were visiting is an even nerdier software engineer. Um, yeah, so we were real into the idea of a Midwest robot for Midwest mom problems of needing to chat. Um, yeah, but I got a hotel room upgrade, so I have a view directly over the Charles River, which is lovely. And everybody takes their dogs everywhere here, which is cool. But like literally in the shopping mall, there were dogs, which is amazing.
Do you think your dogs would be shopping mall ready?
Oli would probably die just from stress. I don't think his arthritic old fat dog legs would do real well on tile. Bailey would probably literally just explode in a cloud of overstimulation. Like she would just cease to exist. Um anyway, how are things at your place, Arlene?
Well, we are back from the city. So between my husband and I and my daughter, we spent most of the week in Toronto, which is weird for us because we are not used to seeing so many people for so many days. It is not completely like we're immersed in city life because we're at the Royal Winter Fair and you're also surrounded by cows. So, I mean, it was a lot of a lot of people from the city, but also lots of the, country folk like us come into town for the week. And so it was a lot. It was overstimulating a lot of the time. But it was great in lots of ways too. We got to see a lot of friends that we don't see too often. Got to hang out with some people from here. Our 4-H kids did amazing. They worked really well as a team, and one of the things that we were, as a team, they were really working towards was to win the tie-up competition, which is so to make the bedding pack where their calves stay be the prettiest and the neatest. And they were really working hard to talk to the judges whenever they came around. And so they came second place, which was amazing. And the same team seems to win every year the last few years. So next year we'll just, up the ante a little bit and see what we can do to knock that first place team out just for maybe next year we'll see if we can knock them off their top place. But that was a sign that they were really working hard together.
That's cool that they have a competition like that too, that encourages other life skills and lets kids use different parts of their talents.
Yeah, that's right. Because, our kids have worked really hard all season and they've done a lot of showing, but we know we're going into a competition. There's representatives from the Maritime provinces. There's a bunch of teams from Quebec and from all over Ontario. So there are 54 teams altogether. And I think the head count was about 340 kids competing in the 4-H dairy show. So, I mean, we knew that our kids were probably not even going to make the cut out of their heats for the most part. Some of them did, but so this was something that we knew that we could work at and that was achievable, even if they didn't have their absolute best day in the showmanship competition, or if their calf wasn't the prettiest, that this was something that we could do and that they could do as a team. And it really pushed some of them too. We've got some fairly reserved people, and so we'd worked hard on kind of prompting them on what kinds of questions the judges might ask, or things that they could say to kind of start conversation with adults, even though they don't know them. So, yeah, that was a good experience, I think, for everybody. And then later on in the week, we moved into the National Holstein Show and the National Jersey Show. So we had animals that we owned in the Holstein Show, and then my daughter's Jersey calf was in the Jersey Show, obviously. So yeah, it was a long, long week. I was really it was good for me. I was staying at my cousin's place who lives in the city. So it was nice to catch up with her, but also nice to have a house to go back to at the end of the day and kind of a quiet place and not be sharing a hotel room with a bunch of other people or anything. My husband was kind of more with the 4-H kids and with the kids that we had hired to help us out at the bedding pack the rest of the week. So he was in kind of dad and 4-H leader mode, and so he was there and I was somewhere else, and then my parents came and my sister came, and so there was a lot of different things going on, lots of transportation using Ubers and the Go train and all that kind of stuff. So also pushing myself to learn new things and be adaptable. And we went, my daughter, my sister, and a friend and I went to go see Casey Musgraves in concert, which was amazing because we had tried a few times before and her concerts had gotten canceled. So we finally got to see her in real life, and we got moved down to the floor, which was very exciting, and ended up really close to one of the stages that she performed on. So that was very exciting too, but it's also nice to be back home with just, a handful of people in my house and lots of cows. Not in my house, but you know what I mean.
Have you seen the Casey Musgraves Christmas special yet, Arlene? It came out a few years ago. Yeah. Highly recommend. It was very cozy, which is nice.
Yeah, it was a great show. Taylor Swift is going to be in Toronto the next 2 weekends, and everyone at the Royal was very grateful it was not happening at the same time as the Royal Winter Fair, because
Oh my God, can you imagine?
none of us would be able to afford to stay there. I don't know what we would have done. Maybe be sleeping in the barn with cows. Thankfully, those events did not line up, because that would have been a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, yeah, good times.
Yeah, so Katie and I are actually having adventures, which is off-farm adventures, but we will both be hanging out on the farm again soon. And I guess we'll go ahead and introduce our guest for this week.
Yep, sounds good.
Today, we are excited to be talking to Val Lavigne, who is joining us from New York State. And Val, we start each of our interviews with the exact same question. So this is your way to introduce yourself to our listeners. So we want to ask you, what are you growing? So this covers crops and livestock, but can also be kids and businesses and all kinds of other stuff. So Val, what are you growing?
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here with you ladies. I look up to you guys and love your podcast, so I'm really excited to be joining you. I am currently definitely growing some kids up in here. I have 3 younger children that I've actually just taken a dive into the ring of homeschooling this past August. So we're doing that. It's very, very scary, but we're getting the job done. And I hope that we can make this work and that I don't let them down, but I think we're doing all right. We live on a dairy farm in what's called Schaghticoke. Don't try to spell it. It is not for the faint of heart. Schaghticoke, New York. And I live with my husband and our kids on our dairy farm, where we farm with my parents, who are first generation dairy farmers. It's really been exciting. They started milking cows when I was about 8 years old, so I remember everything about getting into it and all the hardships that we've gone through to become dairy farmers, because it's definitely not something that's easy to get into on a first generation basis. So it definitely makes me appreciate the farm a lot more, and it's been quite a ride, and I definitely have fallen in love with the dairy. So along with our dairy cows, we also have a small herd of goats that we show, mainly the kids and I show them in 4-H and open classes at our county fair. We have a few laying hens, some random ducks, assorted cats, the normal farm things. I also have 5 horses that I adore. That's one of those things that I definitely got the habit when I was a kid and never was able to kick it. Even though the people around me aren't a huge fan of it, it's still something that when I'm just having a day and I just need some time, all I want to do is just go take a ride on my horse. So I definitely love that. And I also do some things online as Dairy Gal Val. I have a huge passion for educating everybody about dairy farming and answering questions and just, chatting with people, hearing their stories, which also led me into having my own podcast, the Dairy Hour podcast, that I've been doing, for, 15, 16 months now. And I really have loved and enjoyed that. Also, I guess along with the dairy farm, we started a food truck and catering business. This is our 11th year doing it. It's kind of my mom's business, but it's more of a partnership between my husband, my mom, and myself. And we usually run a pretty full schedule throughout the year, doing different, festivals, events. We do one county fair, and we also cater like anything from parties to weddings to anything. And it's been a really great side income for the dairy farm. So I guess I do some dairy beef as well. So if you haven't gathered, I pretty much have my hands in everything, and I don't stop moving from the time I wake up in the morning till the time I hit the pillow at night.
Yeah, that is a lot of different things. So I'm going to loop back for some of our farming people who are curious about this kind of stuff. So what kind of cows do you have? Because that's usually one of the questions people want to know. And I know scale is kind of always a little bit tricky to talk about, but just for people to have an idea around how many cows you're milking, are you raising all your own calves, that kind of stuff. So like how many animals are we talking about?
I've gotcha. So dairy farming wise, we're milking around 170 right now. We have the capacity for about 200. We would love to get up to 400, but we're not quite there yet. We milk pretty much any breed that you could come up with. I love walking through the barn because we don't just I get bored easily. I've got a lot of different things going on. So I, of course, have to have a lot of different cows to look at in lots of different colors and patterns. So we have everything from your normal Holsteins, red and whites, Ashiers, linebacks, mutts that you don't even know what they are, but they're pretty. And you're like, oh, she makes enough milk to stay. Here we are. So I'm really, my dad's theory was always growing up, never have more cows than you can milk by yourself or just as the family if all your help gets up and quits one day. So 170 has been the sweet spot at this point in time. And at some point, hopefully robots are in our future because we're the perfect size for a robot dairy. But that comes with a huge initial investment. And obviously we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, for sure. Now you talked about kids. Do you want to say their ages? I don't think you actually covered that. Yeah.
Yes, so I have identical twin girls that they just turned 9. And so they're like the 4th grade age. And then I have a little boy who is 6.5, and he is a miniature my husband, which God bless me until he's about 20.
Same. Hard, same. So, Val, tell us, how many horses did you have this morning? I just want to hear you say this horse's name again because it just cracked me up.
Oh, so you want to hear the story about old Mike? Dang old Mike. So I was a little late getting on the podcast today because we have some local Amish communities near us, and we had some concrete work to be done. So we hired them to come and do some concrete forming and stuff like that for us. Well, they went and put old Mike out in my barrel horse's just, grazing pasture that he only goes out in for maybe an hour at a time. And it is just that 1-inch thick white tape fence with little cheap plastic posts and no electricity to it whatsoever. My horses don't bother it. Well, old Mike stayed in there for about a few hours, and they looked out and old Mike was gone to the backwoods. So thankfully my barrel horse that I ride, he does do trails sometimes, but never by himself because he is the biggest chicken you will ever meet in your life. He stepped up to the plate and we went and did some real cowboy shit this morning. So
Did you get to use a lasso?
so no, I do have one. I do not lasso on my horse's back because A, I don't want to die, and B, I am about the most graceful person not that you'll ever meet. I would probably end up roping myself and knocking myself off the horse like a blooper. So yes, and what I didn't say is as we found old Mike up in the woods and we had him surrounded, and I was using my horse to try to get him to kind of stay near me so I could get a lead rope around his neck at least so we could get a hold of him. And come to find out, old Mike is also very hard to catch at home in the pasture, which would have been really cool to know before we had to chase him through the woods. But old Mike is safe. He's back where he belongs. He's actually in one of the stalls in my barn now because he's in maximum security prison until he goes home tonight. We're not doing that again.
It says old Mike's living a lap of luxury now, isn't he?
Oh, old Mike is something. They said, oh, yeah, he's real hard to catch, but once you catch him, he's a real good boy. I was like, oh, that's super. Next time you put old Mike out in a pasture, maybe you leave a halter on him when he's in a strange place.
Or find out if there's any power to the fence before they throw him out there.
Or just ask, and I would put him in a stall. Oh, dear. Yep, but old Mike is safe. Everybody's good, and here we are.
Yeah, that's right. So you talked about your parents being first generation. Were you one of those kids who thought that you were going to be a farmer when you grew up, or did you have other plans and then ended up on the farm, or how did you get to where you are today?
So I've always really loved being around the farm. It was never something that I really just despised. When I was, of course, little, like every little farm kid, I want to be a vet when I grow up. And actually, it's funny. We were talking about it the other day. My cousin, Amanda, who is the same age as me, she used to hang out with us all the time on the farm. And we had an old golf cart and we would drive it around and we'd put all sorts of stuff in the back of it, halters, thermometers, pails, bandages, and we'd go from calf to calf and, give them checkups and wrap their legs and do all different things. As I grew up, I decided that vet school was not going to be something that I was interested in. And then I started to look a little bit more into dairy science. I knew I was always going to do something with animals. Never would that ever cross my mind to not. I'm definitely an animal person. So I went to SUNY Cobleskill for dairy science. And then my father always said I needed to have an off-the-farm job before I was allowed back on the family farm, which is really great because it teaches you to learn how to actually be an employee instead of, a boss. So like every farm kid leaving the farm, of course you're the boss. So I went and worked on an 800 cow dairy that's about 40 minutes from here. And I learned a ton about just taking care of cows, making sure that they're healthy, all sorts of herdsperson work. And I learned from one of the best. And then my story took a little turn, and I actually ended up getting a job as a certified milk inspector for a larger milk co-op in the area. I continued to work on the farm part-time, but I really had kind of stepped away from our home farm. I mean, I still did a little bit, but really not much. When I was doing herds work, I was still milking a few times a week and doing some of that stuff. So I was a milk inspector actually for, what did I figure, six or so years. And then I obviously in that time got married and got pregnant with twins. And when I had the twins, I just had this feeling when I was on a maternity leave. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to handle this workload and just this stress level, all the miles with two little babies at home that I want to be with. Especially my husband working full time for our dairy, on the road sometimes with our trucking and all that stuff. So I was like, I don't really want to be out doing milk inspecting anymore. So I kept my milk inspecting license, but I did leave that co-op job and came back to the farm full/part-time. I did pick up a few independent farms that I do inspect still to this day. It's just a nice little side income, and I've been full-time on the farm ever since.
So, Val, just totally guessing at your age, did your folks seriously like get through the 80s farm crisis and then go, you know what we should do is start a farm because there's nobody left? Did they like get a really good deal on a foreclosure or something?
So, nope, we actually, we started milking cows in 1998, I believe. We started renting a old dairy. I couldn't even tell you how long it had been since they'd milked cows there. But we started renting that a few years prior, and my mom would actually raise calves there for a local bigger dairy. And it just was the next thing in line. My mom had milked cows for the neighbor growing up, so she always had an interest in it. My grandparents on her side had beef cows, so she'd always been around cows. And then my dad, his parents were an older family. He was the second youngest out of 12. So he had a really old-fashioned family where they just kind of had a couple of everything out in the back, old falling down barn kind of thing. And he had worked on some dairies and he'd partnered in a dairy, but that hadn't worked out. So it was always kind of something that they really had an interest in. My mom had worked for an eye doctor, and, being home so she could be with me more often was, more enticing to her than working an office job. She's definitely not an office job kind of person. So we actually did some renovations to the old tie stall barn that we were leasing, and we were able to bring in a herd, and we milked 55 cows there for a while. Then a farm about 2.5 miles from that farm actually came up for sale, and it was, definitely a project farm. And it had a 100-cow freestall that had trees growing up through the side of it. It was in rough shape, but it was actually one of the first freestalls, I think, built in New York State in the late 60s, early 70s. So it was, state of the art at the time. Had a double 4 herringbone parlor in it with feeders that were just falling apart. So we bought that, I think, in 1999, and we kept milking cows at the other facility while we fixed up this facility. And I think around 2001, we were able to actually bring the cows here, which was wonderful. I remember the cows getting off the trailer up into the freestall, and since then we've added on to the freestall a breezeway to make it bigger for more cows, and we've added a second side to the big barn to be able to have room for some of our feeder steers and, breeding age heifers, things like that. We've done a huge amount of work here, building some newer buildings, cleaning up existing buildings, trying to put new faces on them and doing things like that. But it's definitely been a labor of love. And, when you have those discouraging days, it's really great to look back in the album that we have that shows the pictures of the farm when we first got here based upon what we have now. And it's very rewarding.
So you're milking on your home farm then?
Yes, we are finally milking there. It came with a house, so we were able to move obviously into the house there, and we built a house for my husband and our family. We built that on the farm too. So it's just wonderful because I get to raise my kids right here on the farm. We live on a quiet dead end road, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I'm always intrigued by folks who are first generation or, pretty close to first generation. And especially, I don't know why in my mind, dairy just seems that much crazier to start into. Like, I mean, dairy farmers are nuts. Like, I love you guys. I really do. I'm super glad you exist, but dairy farmers are nuts. And the idea that somebody would just look around and be like, you know what would be awesome? It's somehow to me, it feels the same as those people who are like, we just bought a sailboat and sailed around the world with our, 8 small children for 2 years. It was great. And I'm like, that's not a thing people do. That's how I feel about new dairy farmers. So, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. I do. But
No, I completely get it. My favorite thing to tell people, because people will be like, I'll be out catering and I love talking to people. And like I said, it's just one of my passions to get to know people and their story and how they got to where they are. So I'll be talking and they'll be like, oh, do you is this like a full-time job or what do you do? And I was like, well, no, this is like a side income for the dairy farm because dairy farmers don't really make any money. So basically we cater to keep the dairy farm in business. So he's like, wait, so you dairy farm too? And I was like, well, yeah. So, you have to be kind of crazy because we dairy farm and farm every day, but then we bust our butts some more on the weekends so that we can afford to keep busting our butts during the week. And you can call it crazy, but it's definitely the way of life and it gets the job done. So.
well, good. As a cheese lover, I am very, very appreciative of all the hard work of dairy farmers everywhere.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, catering and farming, obviously, both physically difficult jobs. I worked in restaurants for a lot of years and obviously farm. It's a lot of physical work for a lot of hours, especially in like a food truck or that's a small space. Um, how do you manage both those jobs, both physically and logistically?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I actually manage. I just kind of do, and I definitely hit the hard, oh my gosh, hit the pillow hard. There we go. Hit the pillow hard at night. But I've actually recently, I guess not recently anymore. It'll be 2 years coming up in January. I started going to a gym actually, and it's a boot camp style, like group class gym. And shout out to Burn Boot Camp. I love it. And it has actually helped me because, as physical as my jobs have always been, I never put the time into taking care of myself. And that has been a huge part of, getting more stamina. I lift things better. I lift things properly instead of hurting my back all the time. It has made a huge difference in my life, and the 45-minute workouts that I try to get in almost every day, plus it's a 20-minute drive one way to get there. But I found that I'm so much more focused and productive, as someone that I've never been officially diagnosed, but I 100% have some ADD going on. And getting that, physical, that like specific physical exertion and just having that community to rally around me. And it's almost a really good mental break from farming as well, because I'm around no one there knows anything about agriculture. And it's almost nice because I never had friends that were out of agriculture. Like I just always was stuck to people that, have the same way of life as me. So it's almost refreshing to go get that time to myself away from anything to do with the farm, anything to do with agriculture. And if I want to go there and I'm just had a rough day farming or a rough week farming, I can just go there. I don't have to talk about farming. They, you get to know your friends that are there at the same times as you, and they'll notice that I'm having a bad day and they will not ask. They know that they're there if I want to talk to them, but they won't ask questions. We just work out next to each other. We work out hard and it just makes everything better. So I've been really thankful for that outlet. And if I spend that hour and a half in the morning between travel and actually working out, I find myself so much more productive. And I feel like my stamina is so much better to keep on getting things done.
Well, I know it too, both from my own work and from seeing a lot of physical therapists. Um, that both farming and restaurant work can be incredibly hard on your joints. You tend to not build any core strength because it tends to be incredibly unbalanced work. And most of us don't get any cardio exercise whatsoever. So you're always exhausted, but you're not actually getting healthy at all. Unless you're chasing old Mike.
Unless you're chasing old Mike or the heifers are out or, you never know.
Consistently in a heart healthy way.
100%.
Yes. How's that? Unless you're climbing silos or chasing old Mike.
Yeah, no, I'm not climbing any silos around here either because I would get up there and they'd have to get the fire department to get me down.
Everyone has an origin story, but some stories hit you in the heart, and the story behind one of our past guests is totally one of those. It all started with a young kid named Kawani.
Yeah, Sean, the chicken guy short of Blooming Health Farms, didn't know he'd be a chicken farmer or that he'd be teaching you how to turn your flock into a business. It began with Kawani, a kid stuck in the court system who needed a second chance. He joined Sean at Blooming Health Farms to turn his life around.
One day, Sean showed Kawani how to sell fresh eggs at a local market. As Kawani started selling those eggs, Sean saw the real power in what he was doing. It wasn't just about the eggs. He was building skills and getting respect from the community. That one small act of selling eggs transformed his life.
And that's how Blooming Health Farms was born. Sean saw that selling eggs could be more than food. It could be a way to help others learn business skills and build their own futures. And now, through their online community called Pimp Your Flock, Blooming Health Farms is taking this mission even further.
Pimp Your Flock is a community for people who want to turn their passion for chickens into profits. You'll learn how to turn your flock into a real income source, and when you join, you're supporting Blooming Health Farms so they can help more kids like Kawani build a better future.
So if you're looking for a way to turn your flock into a business and be part of something bigger, join Pimp Your Flock at pimpyourflock.com. Not only will you learn the skills to make your egg business grow, but you'll also be part of a community that's changing lives.
Head over to pimpyourflock.com today and let's make an impact together, one egg at a time.
Side story as far as you mentioned core work and things like that. Since having 3 children, I always struggled to get my belly back into shape because, I really love to eat good food. Who doesn't? And, I didn't go to a workout program. I didn't have any idea how to make sure that I was using my core correctly, how to ensure that I was, like I mentioned earlier, lifting things properly or, doing things the way that my body wants me to do them. And with starting with this boot camp, we actually figured out that my core was not functioning. I had a split, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of it right at the moment. But my abs in the front were basically not attached to each other.
Diastasis recti.
There you go. That's what it's called.
I think Val and I are actually the same person, Arlene.
Oh, perfect. So maybe I do have looming in my future, right, Kate?
You might. And for our listeners, Val does mean the actual loom that is behind me and not just like sneaking up behind people, which I like as a hobby that you might just like start looming.
Yeah, that'd be fun too. I mean, I'm up for new hobbies.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome.
So I did actually start seeing a physical therapist, and I did 6 months of physical therapy, and I've noticed huge differences in how I use my body just from doing that. And from a person who has grown my entire life, never having any flexibility whatsoever, and that's flexibility in my body, not my schedule. I am the most unflexible person ever. And I've actually stayed on with my physical therapist, and she's working on opening up the muscles in my back and opening up my spine. And it's been absolutely amazing. I see her once a month. She gives me some extra stretches to do, does some mobility work with me, and it's been fantastic. The difference is I go to the chiropractor way less. I hurt my back way less. Tension headaches are much less. It's been really nice.
Getting old is really awesome. For our young listeners, getting older is super great.
It is.
It is. I mean, it's a privilege denied to way too many folks.
Yes. And I've been working, that's kind of been my motto the last 2 years, is just, I'm 35, almost 36. And my goal is I can do more things now at 35 than I could at 25. And that's my goal. I have never met a challenge that I didn't like. And I'm also one of those people, when you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, wait, hold my milk, let me take care of this. So that's kind of just me pushing back at getting older, and age is just a number, and I'm not going to let it, I'm not going to let it get me down.
It's great to work too with people who really can understand our bodies and teach us, like the lessons that we need to learn, right? That we're living in these bodies, but we don't always treat them as well as we should, right? Despite the fact that we're working in physically demanding jobs. So you mentioned before that you're a podcaster like we are. Do you want to talk a little bit about your show and who you're talking to?
Sure. So I have the Dairy Hour podcast, and basically I just love to get the stories. They're mainly rural women from around the United States, and I've actually been blessed to interview some people from around the world. And you know, my main thing is just everyone has a story, and everyone has a way that they got to where they are and how they became successful. And I love hearing their story, hearing the great things that they have to say and have to educate you about. Everyone has something that they are, very specialized in. And I love getting to understand their stories and why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and having a little fun along the way.
Definitely. So you already mentioned the fact that, you had a job change after you had your twins. And we typically are asking, especially women, what that transition was like when you go from 0 to 1 kids, but you went all in, you went from 0 to 2. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that transition to parenthood and what life was like for you at that time?
Life was terrifying at that time. That's what everyone always asks. You had twins, like, how did you
Yeah,
do
can we
it? And I was
pause?
like,
Well,
well,
like two
let's start
years
by,
feels
I
like
didn't
good
really have a
spacing.
choice. I wasn't going to be like, excuse me, doc, I only want one of these. Could you please put the other one back? Like, you can't do that. Like, oh, this is after the whole dairy farmer thing of when you're pregnant. And I was high risk. So I was at the doctor's all the time. And I definitely referred to myself, in cow terms. And my doctor was not 100% amused by all of my comparisons. And they also really realized that they couldn't get things by me because I have such an understanding of science and the way things work that, they treat me like just any other person. And I'm like, no, I know how this works. Like, I know what's going on. And they're like, oh, you do? And I was like, they're like, how do you know? Well, because it's like the cows. And they're just like, you're comparing yourself to a cow. And I was like, I 100% am. Like, let's get these puppies out, run me a bottle of calcium, send me on my way, let's do this. Like, let's go. But I had not really been around much for children prior to having twins, so it was quite a learning curve. I am very thankful for the support system that I have between, my parents, my in-laws, my grandparents. I'm very lucky that my grandparents are only 10 minutes down the road, and I've always been very close with them. They're both in really good health and, absolutely adore their grandkids. But it's been wonderful to just have that support system and help. It, you know, Anyone that has twins, my tips for you, or if you're going to have twins, my tips for you, keep them on the same schedule. Because otherwise, if you let one get up and eat in the middle of the night and don't wake the other one up and feed it, you can bet your butt when you go back to sleep, guess who else is waking up? And you're not going to get any sleep. So that's like my number one thing, is just keep them on the same schedule. And, we just made it work. And yeah, it was great.
I found out recently that referring to your friend's health issue as pregnancy toxemia um, only goes over well with certain people, and I feel like it's a real test of your friendship if they still speak to you after you refer to them in such a way. Let's talk about homeschooling.
Because she seems she seems unconvinced that this is a thing that she's actually doing based on how you talked about it earlier. I know you are doing it, but you sound hesitant. So what why? And I mean, not in a bad way, but like,
Well, Arlene, clearly the why is for horse wrangling and milking purposes. I assume that's
well, it didn't sound like the kids it didn't sound like the kids were out there.
No, the Y is for extra farm help. Duh. No, you got to put them stinkers to work. No.
She's still got 9 more kids to crank out too, so she's got a full complement.
Nope. That ship has sailed long time ago, especially when you have a 1 in 7 chance of having twins. You really got to be careful playing with fire, okay? Because dear God, if I ended up with 5 kids, there's a river out back. I might be jumping in it. I don't know if I could handle that. That's too many kids for me.
So, how, assuming that you had reasons besides horse wrangling and cattle, how did you decide to start homeschooling? You thought, there's an extra 20 minutes in my day, I better fill it up with something? Like, what was your. And I say this as someone who is very similar to you in many ways, I'm guessing. Because, same. Like,
Growing up, I had some friends that were homeschooled. So I've always been enamored by homeschooling. I had like the good, you know, and I say this with a grain of salt, but you have the friends or you have people that like do a really good job homeschooling and their kids are great and they're normal citizens of society. And then you have the people that homeschool and you're just like, dear God, why do people not have to pass a test to homeschool your children? So there's 2 different types of homeschooling people. And I've always been enamored. I grew up around, like I said, a couple different families that homeschooled my friends, and they were always really great people. They still are great people. I know all of them still to this day. And when I had kids, or when my babies were babies, I was like, yes, they're never going to school. I'm keeping my babies here forever. And then they became toddlers. And I was like, never mind. I want these people to go to school because, dear God, I need a break. So they all ended up going off to school. And last year, my husband is anti-homeschooling. He kind of only knew the people that really should not be homeschooling, those people. And he's always been adamant about we are not homeschooling the kids. Like, they can go right to school like normal people. That's fine. That's where they belong, at school. Well, my son was in kindergarten last year. We had a really rough year with him, just not understanding things, not being able to focus in class. Just, it was an absolute nightmare. Come to find out, he has an auditory processing disorder. And if he hears multiple tracks of sound, he gets so overstimulated by trying to figure out what track of sound he's supposed to be listening to that he just shuts everything off. Like, he was not disruptive in the classroom. He was not bold. I mean, no more bold than a normal 6-year-old boy would be. But he was not bold. He just would literally sit there and stare out into space, probably thinking about farming because that's just the kid he is. And you could literally have a conversation with him and he would not have any clue what you're talking about. So come to find out, he was only hearing maybe 30% of what was being said in the classroom. And we did not have a really great experience with dealing with that. And we did not find that out until about May when school ended in June. So there wasn't much time to fix that. But they pushed him, they were going to push him through to first grade no matter what. The girls, they were in pre-K when COVID happened. So they lost the last few months of their pre-K year. They lost probably half of their kindergarten year. And I feel like it was just a huge disservice to them. And, granted, we were doing school from home, which is completely different because it's someone else telling you what to do with your kids. It's on Chromebooks. You're trying to do Zoom, like Google Meets with 5-year-olds.
Yep, I had a kindergartner. I guess I had a grade 1 and a grade 2 for those years, and it was a disaster.
Yeah. I'd rather nail my head to the wall than deal with that ever again in my life. It was the worst. And not to mention 2 kids that didn't have any business being on Chromebooks, being on Google Meets, in 2 different classes, no less, that met at different times and did different things at the same time. Plus a 3-year-old at the time that was just doing whatever 3-year-olds terrorize. It was absolutely just atrocious. But needless to say, the girls, I feel like they never caught back up on that vital time of school that they missed. Their handwriting was terrible. Their spelling is terrible. And they're going into 4th grade. And I was like, when I was in 4th grade, I could write in the lines. I could make a coherent sentence. Like, I could spell. And I was like, there was some other things that I, don't really want to talk too much about that happened within the school. And I'm just like, why? Like, I don't want this to be our situation. Like, I want to make my kids be the best citizens and the best, most successful people that I can make them. I am not the type to just let things just, I'm not going to sit back and just be like, it is what it is. That's not my motto. So I somehow, some way convinced my husband to let me try it. And he was very skeptical at first. My dad was really skeptical. My mom was on board with me because she knew she knew those families too growing up. And she was convinced that we could do a good job. And she, with my travel schedule and things like that, she was like, I will help you when, we need to help. We will figure this out. It'll all be fine. So somehow I convinced my husband to let us do it. And by golly, we did the darn thing. Shout out to Tara Vanderdusen from New Mexico for giving me the faith that I needed to know that I could run a busy schedule and still manage to homeschool my children. Uh, and a couple other friends that I have talked to as well that have just given me that little boost of faith that I can do it. The worst that happens is they go back to school, but you need to give the first couple months, you just have to have a lot of grace, a lot of give, and just keep going and keep going. And eventually it'll click and it'll all fall into place. And that's where we're going. So while I sound skeptical, we've had one of those days today where I'm just like, oh my gosh. But, then I see little things in them that I've already made a difference in the month that we've been homeschooling. And it's amazing. And my husband won't admit it, but he 100% sees some stuff and he won't admit it. Oh, I guess for example, my son, which like I said, they just were going to push him through to first grade. We started doing a first grade English language arts curriculum with him. And I noticed there was huge gaps. Like this poor kid was just going to struggle. And so the really cool thing about homeschooling is I said, well, he's struggling. Let's redo kindergarten with ELA and get a good base so then we can build upon that. And I have the freedom to do that. And it's been great. So we're just redoing kindergarten. We're doing a couple lessons at a time right now just to find the places where he needs more work. And then we'll pause and we'll work harder on them. But just the privilege of being able to do that with them is wonderful.
It seems like so much of the difference is whether families are homeschooling because they're afraid of what their kids will see out in the world, or if they're doing what's best for their family, which is what it sounds like you guys are doing. We're very fortunate to be in a great public school, but I know my husband, sounds like your husband, grew up with people who had no business homeschooling their kids, and really set their kids up for a much more difficult life when they left the farm and went to interact with people who had not been raised like that. Where, if your kid can literally only listen to one thing at a time, I mean, obviously that's a skill to build up. But a kindergartner is maybe not the person to throw into a public schoolroom. Judging by the volume level of my kid's kindergarten class, most of which was probably from my kindergartner, but you can't handicap them that way and then be mad that they're not achieving.
100%. I want to set my kids up to have the best lives that they can. And I'm not setting them up, like, oh, they're going to go on to Harvard or Cornell and be, top of their class. Like, I'm not expecting that out of them, but I want them to go out and be sound citizens that if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, that they're going to be, solid individuals that can think their way out of a tricky situation, that can figure things out for themselves and be self-reliant. And that's important.
I feel like, yeah, our daughter is almost 8 and our son is 6.5, like last week. So we're right in that same phase. And yeah, I want them to be kind, good people, and I want them to be able to do what they want to do, to the best of their abilities. And whatever that is, and hopefully it's not like, drug kingpin or something.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, at least just do it right and don't get caught.
But be good at it, right? To the best of your abilities.
If that's what they're going to do, then I hope that they're, donating a portion of their proceeds and keeping their books well balanced and writing effective ad copy, really thinking through the economic. I don't know. I don't know what a drug kingpin would do that would count as a good global citizen.
Well, that's probably a good thing that you don't know that.
Yeah. But, I want them to be good people. And we're very fortunate to be in a school that is really on board with that, and it is doing a great job of that. But I know a lot of people aren't that lucky. And in that case, pull them out and turn them into weirdos. Absolutely.
Or just let them be weirdos at school.
Yeah, we're not saying that all homeschool kids are weirdos, just for the record. But most kids are weirdos, whether you're in homeschool or school. Yeah.
Most kids are weirdos. Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah, I know that you can't really have a typical day either in farming or catering or parenting, but how does it look these days in terms of your time and your kids' time? How are you getting all the things done and taking time for yourself and maybe riding your horse once in a while and recording a podcast? So like how does childcare and family life and school and all those things actually work out kind of on an average day?
So on an average day, like you said, there is no actual average. But let's just be clear, everything does not get done all the time. Like, you have to give yourself grace. Like, when you do the things, sometimes it's just a priority list of, this is my priority today. This is what I'm going to get done. If this doesn't get done, it's not the end of the world. Like, sometimes you just have to learn to move things around, think on the fly. Like I had a very overwhelming day today anyways, just trying to get everything done because I have to travel out for an event tomorrow. So, chasing down an Amish horse for an hour and 15 minutes was not really on my list of things to do today. But we can look at the silver lining. I was planning on trying to get both of my barrel horses rode tonight, and I can check one off the list already. So we're just looking at the positive things.
There. Silver lining.
Did chasing old Mike down count as your workout for today, or did you get an extra workout in?
I know I got a strength day in at the gym this morning and a cardio day on the horse. We are rocking. No, so I usually get up. I am not a morning person. Let me just throw that out there.
As a dairy farmer, you admit it?
Oh, I will admit it all day, every day. If I have to get up.
Won't she get kicked out of the secret dairy farmer club now? Isn't there like a secret dairy farmer union that she'll get booted from?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay being an outsider. Tell them to bring it on. No. So I'm not a morning person. I can morning if I want to. I don't particularly care to. And if I do, I require a large amount of coffee to get through my day, or I'm just a miserable bitch. Just putting that out there. So I usually get up around 6 and head up. We're milking 3 times a day currently on our farm. It's a management change that we made back in March, and it's so far working all right. So I get up around 6, and the employees will let me know when the hospital cows are going to the milking parlor. So my top priority in the morning is making sure that I'm getting to that milking parlor, laying eyes on the hospital cows, going through them in the milking parlor, seeing how everyone is that day, checking cows, making sure that they're good if I'm going to, do an antibiotic test on them to release them back out into the main herd, anything like that. That's all, my day-to-day things. I get done with that. I take care of all of my pets because, all the horses and the goats, they're all my pets. I go get them all taken care of, and, usually the kids are getting up. I might be able to pop and do a few things in between, but I like to go to the gym to work out around 8 or 9 in the morning. Those are just my preferred times. And my kids will normally hang out here. A lot of the, some of the employees and my parents and my husband, a lot of them will go to have breakfast at the farmhouse. around 8 o'clock. So the kids will usually go there and do that while I go to the gym and maybe run an errand or two while I'm in the suburbs, as they say. Um, so then I come home, and depending on what wild adventure the Feral Farm kids are off to, I will try to wrangle them and get some schoolwork done. I try to alternate doing things between the twins and my little guy, just because it is usually extra chaos if they're all in my little one-room schoolhouse at the same time. That's the other thing. I'm coming at you from a one-room schoolhouse that was originally designed as my office and has made quite the little school building. And it's wonderful because they don't have all the distractions of home, no TV, no anything like that. So they know when they're in here, it means business and let's get this job done. So I try to get some schooling done. Any meetings that I have to hop on virtually, any podcast interviews, they're really good about like, hey, mom has a meeting, head back to the house, make yourself a snack, chill. Here's a book, go read for 20 minutes and then, do this. So secret, they're supposed to be folding laundry right now. I can guarantee you they're not folding laundry. God only knows what they're doing. Probably making more mess for me to clean up, but here we are. And it'll be
But they're
fine.
leaving you alone for a little while.
They are. I literally was like, I am not, it's not even mommy's podcast. I was like, I'm on somebody else's podcast. You need to like not bother me. And they were in their heads, they're like, oh, okay. But in their heads, they're going, sweet. She's going to be like tied up for a little while. We can do whatever we want. This is going to be great.
Yeah, we made a fort out of the laundry baskets.
Yes.
Val, I have to say, I learned a genius level trick from my friend Amanda Donlin, who better be listening so that she can hear me shouting her out. I dropped by her house the other day. I don't think Arlene was with me. I think it was my kids that were with me. We walk in because nobody's answering the door, and her 7-year-old son is sitting there folding laundry, just doing it. And I was like, well, now what the hell magic spell is this about? Like, he's a good kid, but he's not that good. He's 7. Turns out she has their Alexas set up and his iPad set up so that she can yell at him through Alexa on basically any electronic device in the house. Like, probably their thermostat is set up to yell at her kids.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's amazing because if you use Alexa Announce, I think it is, she was upstairs putting the baby down for a nap. You can type it in so you don't have to talk on your end, but it will yell at your kids on their end.
That sounds fun. I might need to do some investing. And Greg said I needed to stop getting stuff on Amazon.
Sorry, Greg. Not sorry at all, actually. That's what my kids have for their alarm clocks now too, because I control them through their alarm clocks, which is amazing.
That is wonderful.
The robot said, wake up.
It was SpongeBob this morning. Val, I was thinking too when you mentioned about the kids going over to the farmhouse, how great homeschooling can be for that multi-generational life, and that, farm kids, I think, generally maybe tend to get more exposure to different generations of family or different generations of folks. But I was talking to someone this weekend about how kids don't see old folks in general society, and older folks don't see little kids, unless they have grandkids that visit. And how cool that is that your kids and a lot of our kids are growing up with more generations of people around, because I think it's a lot healthier than only seeing people who are more like you.
100%. And they love like going to great grandma and great grandpa's house is like the best thing ever for them. They absolutely love it. It's wonderful. And they learn, that you need to take care of your people, and, your time is limited here on earth, and you need to make the best out of the time that you have, and spending the time with those people that mean most to you is, irreplaceable.
All right. So, what farm-specific piece of parenting advice would you like to share with our listeners? And do your kids have horses? We didn't cover that part. Let's just get back to this horse situation.
This is like, so my kids don't mind the horses. My husband hates horses. We're going to throw that out there. My dad hates horses, but he randomly brings some home every once in a while for me, which is, haven't figured that one out yet. My mom loved horses when she was a kid and then grew up and decided that they were useless after she got me attached to them, of course. My kids don't mind being around the horses, but they don't really want to ride. They don't really care to like go with me, which breaks my heart because I was hoping at least 1 out of 3. I just wanted 1 out of 3, and I couldn't even get that at this point. So we're going to keep on trying.
How about if we trade maybe your little boy for my daughter for a while? Because I feel like your little boy and my little boy would have a great time together. And my daughter wants nothing more in life than a horse or 8, which I would be happy to provide, but daddy is a little less enthusiastic. But, then you could have a little horse friend.
See, I had the horses prior to the husband. So it was more of like he knew what he was getting into. And he was basically told right off the get-go, like, if you ever make me choose between you and the horses, like, see ya. So I mean, there's that.
I wonder if I could amend our prenup, because on one of our first dates, we wrote up a prenup because we're those people. That I would keep the dogs and he would keep the tractors, but I wonder if I could just sneak it in that I had a promise of future horses and just pretend it's always been there. Been like, I don't know why you don't remember that, dear. I probably shouldn't say it.
How many more tractors do you think he would to try and purchase, though, if the horses got added?
How many more tractors do you think have been added in the years that we've been together, Arlene?
Just say it's a trade. I'll trade you 2 horses for X amount of tractors.
I wonder how many mules, like what's the mule to tractor versus horse to tractor conversion?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a lot of horses per horsepower.
Or like goats to tractors? We need to work on this.
Horsepower.
Maybe we could get that was it Kevin, the ox guy, back on.
Yeah.
He seems qualified for this. Okay, so farm parenting advice. What do you got for us?
Well, hold on a second. Did you just say something about an ox guy?
Yeah, we had an ox guy on. He was amazing.
So I had a little ox because when I was a kid, I showed milking shorthorn dairy cattle. And I am obsessed with Laura Ingalls still to this day. And I had a little shorthorn bull calf born, and I 100% turned him into an ox, steered him, grew the horns, did the things. A friend of the family's made me a 1 ox yoke for him as like a bigger calf. And I 100% hooked him to the pony cart with a halter on and drove him around.
And how old were you? Because I need to picture this image of little Val.
Oh, I was probably like 11 or 12.
That is awesome.
And his name was Abe the ox.
Of course.
And then Abe got a little naughty and a little bigger, and Abe started to be a real jerk. So then Abe had to become Hamburger. I mean, I don't know. but it was fun while it lasted. And he was a cool little dude. I wish that he had stayed good forever. And secretly, I've always wanted a pair of oxen. But instead, here we are.
Arlene, we should really poll our listeners and past guests on how many of us have had oxen, worked oxen, or have really dreamt of oxen ownership or interaction. Because I feel like there's probably a strong divide between my listeners and your listeners on oxen.
I was just going to say, I've never really thought about oxen until this moment. Well, I guess other than our one guest.
Well, I think there's at least like 3 or 4 of us that are firmly on the pro oxen list.
Dude, they are the coolest things ever. Like, they're just such like gentle giants, and they're so cool.
See, Arlene, that's 3 whole listeners on my side.
I believe you. There you go.
Woo! That's including me. Okay, so now farm parenting advice and go.
So obviously, first and foremost, I want to make sure that my kids understand the safety of being around the farm. The farm is dangerous. So ensuring that they know, where their safe places are, the safe things to do, paying attention to equipment and things moving around the yard. But I want my kids to be involved. I want them to be feral farm kids. And that's kind of as funny as it is, that's kind of the saying behind my homeschooling. Like, I want them to be feral farm kids. I want them to be out experiencing things instead of sitting watching screens and, playing video games. Like, someone the other day asked me, you know, oh, what are you doing for gym? Like, are you joining a homeschool co-op? Are you doing this? I was like, they're feral farm kids. Like, if they're not learning, for the most part, they're out running around like crazy, whether it be digging in the dirt, playing with their goats. They know where it's safe to go and where it's not safe to go right now. And, my little guy, he just wants to be farming all the time with dad. He goes all over. The man cannot get in a skid steer without my son being like, hi, it's me. I'm going with you. Like, and it's amazing just letting them, I don't want to force the farm on them though. That's one thing that I try to be really particular about, because I don't want them to develop a hatred for it. I don't want to force them into thinking that they love it and then have them be like, well, my parents made me be a part of the farm. I want them to want to be here. I want them to want to learn and, be curious about things, ask questions, but I want them to find their passion. I don't want to force them into having the passion, even if it's something that I really have, which is kind of how I've been with horses as well. Like, I would just, oh my gosh, I would give anything to have one of them want to ride horses with me, but I'm not going to go out there and force them kicking and screaming and crying to get on a horse and do something that they don't want to, because that's not fair to them. So I definitely want them to lead by interest, and I want them to be actually passionate about it instead of being forced to do stuff.
Val's a good mom. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's really hard to let our kids just be interested in the shit they want to be interested in instead of letting us relive our entire lives through them, which I feel like is what they were supposed to do, but they just won't.
They're not as interested in oxen as you are, Katie.
Not yet.
Yeah, maybe they don't even know about oxen. You got to get back right into the Little House on the Prairie.
It's entirely possible that my kids don't know about oxen.
Get them a pair of driving ponies.
There you go. Carts and all.
Driving ponies.
What about goats?
Oh, you could do that too.
A little goat cart would be nice.
You could. There's somebody on Facebook or something, and they have like a cool goat that pulls a cart. I don't remember what it's called. It's pretty cool.
I wonder if I could... Jim, stop listening right now so that I don't give away my secret. I wonder if I could convince my husband that I said goat cart and he just heard that I was getting the kids a go-kart, and then it would just be too late by the time he found out that that's not what I said.
It's already here and the kids already love it. Sorry.
Okay, Jim, you can start listening again. Yeah, they've already named him. It's too late. Whoops. Sucks to be you, sir.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yep. I mean, I'm pro goat cart as well, or pony cart or donkey cart.
Livestock pulling things. Go for it.
Go for it. Do it.
Yeah. So I feel like we maybe have already answered this question. What is your favorite thing about raising kids on the farm?
Just getting to watch them experience things. Like, one of the cool things that which sucks to be a dairy farmer and have this happen, but we had a cow that got a DA, displaced abomasum. And, that's normally something that would be taken care of while they were at school and things like that. It doesn't happen very often here on the farm. But, one of their first homeschooling days, we got to go up with the vet and they got to watch. And, one of my girls was just kind of like skeeved out by it. And the other girl was like, it was kind of gross, but man, it was pretty cool. She's going. And that to me is just, I remember the first DA surgery that I watched at a neighbor's farm when I was a kid. And it's just funny now that she has that same experience, and she's just like, and they'll keep, it's been a few weeks now and they'll still like all of a sudden like think about it. And then they'll just ask me a random question, and just getting them to experience these things, it's just mind blowing.
Mm-hmm. And what is your biggest parenting challenge these days, other than homeschooling?
My biggest parenting challenge is just, we're not quite to the age of independence yet, where they can, where I can kind of just get my stuff done without, worrying about them. but they are fairly independent. So as long as they know where there's an adult right here on the farm, they're pretty independent as far as that goes, which is, I think it's a pretty, a bonus about being on the farm and almost like our own little cul-de-sac down here. We don't really, the closest neighbor is a quarter mile away, and we have like our own little areas surrounded. We've got the hay field with a river on the other side of it on one side of us, and a very large ravine hill with lots of trees and stuff. So it's almost like our own little secluded island down here. So they just get to run free and enjoy being kids. I don't have to worry about creepy people coming over from driving down the road from the neighborhood and things like that. So they just get to have that carefree childhood that I want them to have. But it's challenging, just making sure that they're safe and making sure that they, get to be the kids that they want to be and not being forced into things. It's all a challenge.
Well, yeah.
Not to mention attitudes.
Yeah, you're going to have two 11-year-old girls at the same time. I remember my mom always saying that 11, I mean, not, you don't need to tempt fate because, I mean, it's going to come whether you're ready for it or not. But yeah, two girls at the same time is going to be fun.
With an annoying little brother, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
He loves playing the annoying little brother part, or one of the girls and him team up and then make the other girl feel bad because, like, oh, they're not playing with me, blah, blah, blah. But then it changes from day to day, and I'm just like, you're fine. Find something. Like, there's plenty to do.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what's your biggest parenting challenge?
Just time, trying to make sure that we get it all in, and just, trying to figure out the right way, especially with my son having some of the auditory processing disorders and stuff. Plus, of course, little 6-year-old boy, ADD. Just trying to figure out how to best get him to learn and listen that's been quite a challenge right now. Knock on wood, the girls are easy right now, minus just some attitudes, but mama's got enough attitude to get back at them. So
I told someone last week our kids' school photos came in, and I said something about how our daughter has resting Supreme Court justice face because she brings the attitude. I have no idea where she got it.
same. I don't know where mine got their attitude and their sassiness either. Like, definitely not from mom.
No, I'm an agreeable little angel. You can ask my husband.
Seriously, same.
Val, do you still do school photos if you homeschool?
It's something that's crossed my mind.
How are you going to get all those awkward pictures of your kids?
See, now I have been really lucky, and I don't know how I've gotten this lucky. Every single school photo that they've ever gotten has been like perfect. So I don't know if the photographers are just really good or what the deal is, but knock on wood, no awkward ones yet. I was actually thinking, got myself the latest iPhone. I was thinking of going and just doing a little photo shoot and being like, here's your school pictures, kids. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, prop them up behind a weird looking background, some lasers.
Yeah, you could have some actual barnwood in your background.
We could.
Yeah, that library backdrop, put all the books behind them.
It would all just be reproductive manuals. It's just 50 copies of the Merck Vet Manual lined up behind your kid's head.
Yeah. No, I'm a huge reader. I've got lots of novels. Some of them might not be kid appropriate, but we've got them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Katie, do you want to do our county fair question?
I'm just going to finish up with Val. I read a lot of books that were not appropriate for my age, and that's probably how I turned out this way, but I think I'm pretty awesome. So
I think you're pretty awesome too. We're good. Let's do it.
Start letting them read Vonnegut. They'll be fine. Whatever. Okay. Val, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? Categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
Ooh, I don't know. I say I'm not a competitive person, but I 100% am a competitive person. And your girl won the adult goat showmanship this past year.
Oh, nice.
Yep. I'm going for it. I'm a goat shower through and through. Love my girls. They're crazy.
I love it. Do you have a big ribbon, a banner? Where is it?
So, because it's just open class, so it's nothing too exciting. It's just a blue ribbon. It's not special, but it's fun.
You could order your own banner.
It was the pride. I should get my own banner. Be like, I won adult showmanship. Take that.
Yeah, I love it.
I really hope, Val, that next year you enter an open class with like a bunch of little kids and like retirees and just get like bizarrely hyper competitive and like throw down and try to make some little kids cry. Like not seriously, but just because it would be funny to be like,
I am a good citizen and I'm only competitive with other adults. I would never make the kids cry.
I would laugh if you did. I mean, I would feel bad for them, but I would laugh.
The teacher heart in me, I couldn't do it. But adults, they're going down.
I just picture it being like the runway walk-off scene in Zoolander, you know, where they just get like stupidly competitive, but with little kids and goats.
That was a friend of mine. I was at a meeting and there was a air hockey table in like a hangout room in this hotel. It was like the coolest hotel ever, and they had a ping pong table and stuff, which I'm not going to play ping pong, but I was like, "Oh, do you want to play some air hockey?" And he's like, "Sure, I haven't played in a while." And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to have some fun, not really anything competitive." Well, two people that said it wasn't going to get competitive, we were like going at it. It was so funny. Like, yeah, that poor air hockey table did not see us coming.
Okay, one last question and then we can get back on script, Arlene. Do you practice your like quote unquote runway/ring walk before you show?
I don't. When you're this good, you don't need to practice.
Love it. She is bringing the confidence. I am here for it.
Oh my gosh, that's going to sound so bad to people who don't know me.
Arlene, please use that quote in all of our materials for this episode.
Oh my gosh. They're all going to be like, "Wow, who's that girl? She's such a jerk."
So, my kids do spend more time with screens, but my little boy especially learns so much shit from what he watches. I don't know what he's watching that he's learning all this stuff. But then he comes with the questions, which is great. Like, I am so here for like curiosity and interest, and he wants to know what's bigger or what's older or what's taller, whatever, all these sorts of things. But what it has done to my Google search algorithm and how frustrating it is, because I want to help him answer his questions, but he doesn't read well enough, and we don't have encyclopedias, and I'm sure as shit not going to turn my 6.5-year-old loose on Google just by himself. But having to Google how big a giant squid is, and then try to explain that to him, and then how big a colossal squid is, and then explain that to him, and then discuss which one is bigger, and why this one has bigger eyes, but that one weighs more, and which whale is bigger, and how big is that compared to our barn, and how big is a basketball court anyway, and who's the oldest person in the world. And this is all in the space of, I swear to God, less than 20 minutes while I was trying to cook supper last night. And I wasn't even going to ask Alexa, because two, he's still got that little kid voice and Alexa can't understand a damn thing he says. Like, I am completely here for it, but at the same time, like, kid, could we maybe have like an office hours once a week and you can just write down all these questions and then just bring all of them at once? And Arlene, if you have any good recommendations as a geographer about good world maps or globes or any other way to show my kid where New Zealand is, any tips and tricks for answering questions for little ones who will just come up with 20 more questions for everyone that you answer?
And who would really like to see that creature in real life, but don't realize that New Zealand is not around the corner.
And also that T-Rexes are extinct, and that if only one colossal squid has ever been photographed, we're probably unlikely to see one in Iowa.
Yeah, probably.
Etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
All the questions.
And also yesterday it was, well, why can't we go to China this weekend? They have planes there, and as the girl child informed me, they have hotels, mommy.
That's the limiting factor.
Like that was going to be why we couldn't go to China for the weekend. Yes, was lack of hotels. Anyway, Val, what do you have to cuss and discuss this week?
So I have to tell you a little side story about why you can't just go to China this week. Money, probably, time. But when I was a kid, I would just be like, well, yeah, you have a check, just write a check for it. So I don't know what the problem is, just write a check for it because, that solves everything. So,
Yeah, like a credit card, a check, any of those things. Just use that.
yes, you have a check, so you're good. Like, go for it. I think you should just go for it. If we see stories that you're in China this weekend, like, we're going to know the kids got her.
I mean, I would
Yeah,
think that
that's right.
probably the fact that I'm the only member of the family with a passport might slow things down a little.
Well, that's just logistics.
Yeah, seriously. You can fix that. Come on. Do you have a checkbook? Like, fix it.
Yeah,
Just do
go
it.
stay at a hotel.
I was informed by my daughter this morning that I should not order the toy that I'm clearly going to buy her today off Amazon.com, as she calls it, because it's way too slow. Walmart.com will be way faster, mommy. I'm not buying it either way, kid. We got to save our money for China, but the advertising is working.
What do you want? Do you want this toy or do you want to go to China? Dang it. What do you want to do?
Okay, did you have anything else to cuss and discuss, Val, besides my going to China this weekend?
Oh my gosh. I'm cussing and discussing those dang kids that won't just pick up after themselves. Like, why? Why do they have to be such a disaster? And why do my kids blame me when their room is messy? That apparently it was neat, and while they weren't in the house, do you know what I did? I went in their house, or I went in their room, and I made their room a mess. Because that's what moms like to do in their spare time.
My kids are going to feel so much better that it's not just me that does that when they go to school every day. Like, dumps all their toys out, throws everything off onto the floor.
Yes, well, it wasn't this messy when I left, so you must have done it. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, are you kidding me?
And now that they're homeschooled, they hardly leave. So I mean, you've got less time to get in there and mess up their room than before.
Or when they're sleeping too. I love going in when they're sleeping and just destroying the place.
Yeah, risk waking them up and mess up their room. That's definitely a nighttime mom activity.
Yes.
Stay up all night just for that.
Yeah, I'm going to extend our cussing and discussing with mine, which is also the getting blamed when they can't find a thing that I have never touched or don't even really care if they find necessarily. But yeah, the inability to see a thing that's probably right in front of them or could be in the room that they could clean up. Or is in maybe even the place where they're supposed to put it, which seems to be always the last. Like it does seem like a shock, though. Like, have you checked your cubby? Like in our mudroom, they each have a spot. Like when they get home from school, where they put their backpacks and stuff. Like, have you checked there? And it's always a revelation if it's actually there. It's like, oh, go. Yeah, go figure. You actually put it where it's supposed to, which I understand is confusing because most things don't go there.
It feels the same as how every morning it is this horrifying new discovery that I expect them to put on shoes and a jacket and go get in a damn car so they can go to school. Every morning. What is this crazy new idea that she's got about us bathing and brushing our teeth and putting on shoes? How can they possibly deal with all this?
And dear God, don't ask them to brush their hair.
No, definitely not. That is unacceptable.
But I brushed it. Can't you tell? I was like, no, can't. Couldn't get a brush through that if I tried.
Yeah, that's right. And let me smell your head. Did you actually use shampoo in that bath?
Yeah.
Go back.
Or too much. They either use none or like a half a bottle.
Yeah, that's right. There needs to be some more rinsing. Because if it rains, your head is going to bubble.
Or they're using mommy's expensive face soap to wash their toys. That's like the only other end of that. Not that that's ever happened, but I've heard that that would be frustrating for other people who are not me.
All right. I'm going to wrap up our conversation because I feel like we could talk forever. But thank you so much to Val for joining us today. If people want to listen to your podcast, find you online, where should they look you up?
Sure. So I have dairygalval.com. You can find links to all my podcast episodes there, as well as how to contact me. Also, you can find the Dairy Hour podcast on all major podcast platforms. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, a little bit on YouTube at Dairy Gal Val. Please connect with me. And if you have any questions about the dairy industry or about my crazy life, reach out. I would love to chat.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you and to chat with you today.
Thank you. You guys as well. This has been so much fun.
Thanks, Val.
Even if it was delayed by old Mike.
Oh, Mike.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.